Welcome, my friends, to another YouTube version of the BJJ Brick Podcast. I hope you enjoy the show, and if you do, please subscribe to the channel. So here we go.
Thank you for listening to the BJJ Brick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends. This is episode 195 of the BJJ Brick Podcast. My name is Byron. I'm here with Gary. Gary, I had a good workout this morning.
We did. It was fun rolling, even though you dodged me and dodge, dive, duck, damage. No, but
dip
we got
and
to roll
pass.
we got to roll for like 10 minutes, so that was good. But,
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so it's always fun to roll before we do our podcasting.
Yeah. And good times. I managed to distract you with some idle conversation, which is really one of my better techniques, to kind of just conversate and then try to hop on and lash something up, but I couldn't make that happen. But
well, the worst thing was I tried to go for a low single, and I was in deep, and the next thing I know, I'm on the bottom. So it did not work out too well for me.
Yeah, but good for you for trying the low single. I'm too much of a chicken.
Yeah.
So, But we have a great episode. Lea Taylor is going to be our interview this week. She is a black belt at Straight Blast Gym, and she recently took third at Worlds. And just really, it's fun talking with her. Great mind for jiu-jitsu, and she's sharing her thoughts and what she's doing to climb that rank at black belt, very elite level, a competitor, and to try to make her mark on the sport. And really enjoy talking with Lea.
Yeah, definitely. Just an incredible talent, and we're all going to learn something today. For her taking her time out to come and talk to us. So don't miss that part of the show. If you want to miss anything, miss Byron's introduction. Most people don't like listen to Byron talk, so you can go through that stuff really.
Yeah,
quick.
we got to figure out a way. Once we get Gary doing the interviews, it's going to be a way better show.
Yeah, definitely a way better show. That's what I like to say, and my mom also said that too. So, she's got my back, literally.
Yes,
that's a joke for anybody who's been listening to the show.
Yeah,
for a
about
while.
20 episodes back or so. But yeah,
Byron plays jokes on me all the time, and unbeknown to me, and he'll tell all the listeners and everything that he's playing a joke on me, and I fall into the traps all the time. I'm not the brightest.
But you do have a good sense of humor, and
actually, I think it's pretty
funny.
fun.
See, something that doesn't really need a sense of humor is our email list. It just has the facts and the show notes. If you want to get all the notes sent to you every week, go to bjjbrick.com or go to our Facebook page and put your name and email address in there. And basically, every Tuesday, we send out the show notes, and it'll have links to Lea Taylor's gym, and it'll have a link to the article of the week. It'll have the quote written out for you so you don't forget it in case you wanted to, you're driving right now and you can't write it down, and that was a good quote. I want to share that with somebody. Well, check your inbox, and there it is, waiting for you to quote again.
Also, I'd like to remind you of our Byron's audiobook, 6 BJJ training games. We have a link to it on the show notes. It's the newest audiobook under the BJJ Brick umbrella. And basically, these BJJ training games, it's basically trying to help you get better. When you're rolling, you want to have a little bit of fun. And basically, playing these games will get you better faster. It'll develop your team. You'll discover your new unique game, and you're going to have more fun. It's about an hour long. It's only $5.99. The money from this book goes to keep this brick floating. And there's all sorts of games that are going to help you get better at jiu-jitsu. My favorite, and I'll let Byron elaborate on a little bit, is duck, duck, snap the goose.
Yeah, that's not one of the games, but Gary's making a book, and maybe it'll be in there.
You notice how I put a little pause in between there so you could cut that out?
Why would I cut that out?
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted to cut it out.
But I find a lot of value in altering my rolling sessions slightly. and you can call them a game or call them like a mode. I'm still working within the framework of my game, but I'm doing things differently, and it's really helped me a ton to discover what fits well with what I'm doing. And these 6 training games are the ones I use most often, or I've had the most success with so far. And I'm always experimenting with different ideas. But yeah, it's just a way to alter what you're doing already, and maybe find a combination off of that, or find something else that really fits well to your game. And that's kind of what they're designed to do.
Yeah, you're going to have fun, and it's going to get you better. And that's basically what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's the goal of that. So check it out in the show notes. There'll be a link to it, or on the website. And we've got some good feedback about it so far.
Yep, and, nobody will ever say Byron, is a self-made man. Speaking of that, let's get on to our quote.
Okay.
This week we have one from George Shin. This is the guy who popularized the Shin choke. George Shin. There's no such thing as a self-made man. You will reach your goals only with the help of others. It is true. We need people to get us to a certain level. I do think some people could probably make it to a certain level by themselves, but it's definitely a lot easier, a lot more rewarding, and to bring other people into it. But we have to use others, have to get other people on our team, get them on our side, and we have to work together with a team. I mean, we have to all work together, have that synergy, and to put us at that certain level. And it kind of reminds me of the gym. And I know we talked about this last week. You look at the guy who's on the top of the podium, let's say it's yourself or one of your teammates, but there's no way he could have got to that top of the podium without his training partners, without his team, without his gym. And, those guys are all, putting him through his rounds, helping him make weight and getting him stronger, working on new technique, working on his defense, doing shark in the middle to get his, cardio up, just anything possible to get him to that spot. And, most people you do hear them say, they're always thanking their teammates. And, I can tell you, jiu-jitsu, I could not be where I am if I just trained by myself.
That's true.
Does that make sense, Byron?
Yeah, the idea is pretty ridiculous.
I might be good at shrimping. Very good at it. I'd probably be better at shrimping up and down the mat, and probably really good at forward rolls. But I probably wouldn't be any good, when I went against somebody, a live person.
Yeah, Gary would be so good at shrimping he could do it in the water as a swimming method.
I would be so good at shrimping that I'd open a Red Lobster.
There you go. That's a lot of shrimp.
Yep, you got that right.
But just the idea that you could become good at jiu-jitsu without other people helping you. You could say team or, just training partners or whatever. That idea is ridiculous. And then take that on other things.
Yeah, you think of your job. There's always, I can think of my job. I have a person when I first started my job, he kind of took me under his wing. And, he has helped me, move up the ladder. He's kind of, a little bit older than me and been in the business longer and, very sharp mind. And, I owe a lot to that person. That person has really, helped me out in my career. And I can tell you I would not be there without that person. And it goes the other way. Now that I'm getting up there in age, as Byron likes to say, I'm old and decrepit. But, I do the same thing. I look for some of the younger people that I work with and, try to pay it back. And, and it's not just me helping that person out or that one person helping me out. It's, it's the whole workplace. I mean, we're all working together to, for a common goal. Just like, we're talking about the jiu-jitsu gym and, it goes back to the family structure, same thing with your significant other. You're working together. I can tell you're actually a much better person, since you become married to Becky. I mean, I want to say the same thing for Becky. I mean, you kind of drag her down, but on the other side, she's made you much better.
She's going to love it.
Much better. You're much better with her around.
Yeah.
But not vice versa.
I keep telling her that I'm a good catch, but she hasn't quite figured out that I'm just trying to trick her the whole time. But
if you keep saying enough, sooner or later somebody will believe it.
Just got to get one, and I got her. But George Shin, actually looked him up, and wouldn't you know it, he was the former owner of Charlotte/New Orleans Hornets, and and I think
also the guy who popularized the shin choke.
Yeah, well, that we all knew that fun fact about the shin choke, but that's why they call it the shin choke, not because the surprising thing is you don't use your shin, you use your gi. It's just a choke.
Well, what George Shin says is the shin choke is so nasty that you can even drop the last end.
I don't even get that, Gary.
Me neither. But it's because he had two N's.
Oh, drop the last N, SHINN. I got you.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a very good joke, but I thought I'd throw it out there and see if anybody liked it.
The audience of one that could hear you now give you light feedback.
If anybody liked it, please, send us an email at bjjbrick@gmail.com. Yeah.
But one more thing about this, the quote here, about being, you can't really be a self-made person. You always are going to rely on other people to help you. And so when you do accomplish that big goal, or you win a tournament, or you reach some big milestone, I think it's important to feel that sense of accomplishment and try to feel that reward, but also thank the others that have helped you. And it might just be, let's just use it because we're jiu-jitsu. Use a tournament example. Thank you, coach. Thank you, teammates. And that might be, a lot of times you get, somebody will tag somebody on Facebook and say, hey, thanks for my coaches and team for doing that. Or it might be, you might talk with your teammates, hey, you worked on this certain pass with me and actually used that. So thanks a ton. That really helped a lot in the tournament. And then also, if you're married, or if you're getting a little time off early from work or something like that, say, hey, thanks a lot, sweetheart, for letting me go train all these evenings. I know I haven't been as home as I would like to, often as I like to be, but the training really helped out a lot. I know you've had to pick up some extra stuff around the house and do things that I usually do, but the tournament was a big focus, and you really helped out in making that. Like, there's the same thing at work. People help you out as a team, and I think when you reach a goal, to recognize that they have helped you really develops that team mentality. It's not all about, yeah, I did it, yay, my team won. No, it's we did it, and I think that really builds strong teams, and strong teams are always going to be leading the pack.
Yeah, I really like what you said there, and one thing I've noticed, like, we always have the team aspect. It seems like I always see it in jiu-jitsu, but I try to carry over the team aspect into work, and I really like it when I'm, talking to, other managers or anything of that sort. And, I always hear, like you said, we, the team. And I can almost just tell by the way the manager talks about, the department, how well that department works together just by the words the manager uses. But, is when you start hearing team and we, and, that just makes a big difference. And that's what I always try to instill, not just in the jiu-jitsu gym, but at work too.
Yeah. Always important. And if you're doing an interview and you feel like it's hard to brag about yourself, I think that people have a hard time doing that. Brag about the teams you were on and how well you guys work together. And that's a thing, I think, not that I go interview people all the time. I do interview people, but on the show, not interview people for jobs. But I think if you're interviewing somebody and they're talking, that maybe they struggle about saying, yeah, I'm really good about analyzing this, or, these types of skills. Talk about how great your teams have been and how it's been really great to be part of that. Don't come in and say, yeah, my team is kind of crappy. But
I'm a stud.
Yeah. They're going to see that, and they want you to be their team member. Bada boom, bada bing. Welcome to a new job. Right, Carrie?
Right. You got that right. It made me think, though. I wonder, like, if you put that on your resume, that you interview people weekly. I mean, I think you could probably, snag a job in human resources if you wanted to.
Maybe, but I
do
like
have a lot of
job.
Experience. Yeah.
Human resources would be a hard job. That wouldn't. I have a lot of fun, Gary. I really feel like I don't have a job because I go to work and I have a lot of fun. I talk to people like Leah Taylor and have a lot of fun and go train and.
Can't go wrong with that.
I'm having
that's the key.
A great time. Human resources. I gotta fire people, Gary. That's tough.
Well, it would work out though with your skills. And I mean, because some people do get upset, when they get fired.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, I wouldn't, get upset because I know I was going to get choked out if I got upset with you. So I think that would be that would work to your advantage.
I'd have to consult HR.
Plus, you're already professional looking. I mean, with your nice haircut.
I'd have to consult HR to see if I could choke somebody. But if I am HR,
yeah, you just write the rules.
yeah, there you go.
Yep, just put it in the policy manual.
Well, thanks, Gary. I'll look into this career opportunity.
Yep, and if anybody else is in HR, you can use those ideas.
There you go. Spreading jiu-jitsu one choke at a time through the HR manual. But I really think that this is just stressing the idea of having a strong team and all that, working towards that, not just working towards your own goals and your being a self-made person. You're part of a team, and the better your team does, the better you're going to do. And that team could be on the mat, could be at work, could be family. If any of those teams are lacking, they'll probably affect each other. And so, I think it's a big deal, and appreciate the quote from George Shin. Glad he sent it in, right, Gary? Really on a personal email basis with that guy. Speaking about teams, Straight Blast Gym has been a great team that we've found a lot of really interesting interviews from some of their coaches. And so when I got a hold of Lea Taylor, I knew this was going to be a lot of fun. And I was right. So here comes the interview with Lea Taylor from Straight Blast Gym. He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
Many years ago, I was warned that an opponent can move like water. He wore a swimming suit during the match. This is the first ever match. There was no gi. I can check the air pressure in my tires by squeezing them with my hand. I am the only competitor in any combat sport to be disqualified for using mind tricks. I escaped a very tight arm bar by telling my opponent it was not the submission he was looking for.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Brick podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy to bring Lea Taylor to the BJJ Brick podcast. Lea, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you. You've been competing and making a little bit of news, and I kind of stumbled across you, and I was like, I got to get her on the show, and you graciously accepted the invite. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing?
Sure, yeah. I am a Straight Blast Gym black belt, and I'm currently training out of the Straight Blast Gym in Kalispell, Montana. I had my beginnings in karate and traditional martial arts, and as I moved around the country and kind of trained different styles of traditional martial arts, I eventually found jiu-jitsu, wanted something that was a little more functional, a little less kind of performance-based, and got really hooked on it, and that's kind of all she wrote.
How long have you been training?
I started training jiu-jitsu in about 2009, sometime that year.
Okay. And had you done martial arts before that, or...
Yeah, I started karate in 2000. My mom wanted me to have some self-defense, so I got really into karate. I got my black belt in karate, and that was in a college setting. And then once I started moving around, I worked for the Forest Service. I was a wilderness ranger in Alaska and an avalanche safety educator in Montana. So I was going back and forth between Alaska and Montana. I had some time in northern Maine as well, some really beautiful forests. And wherever I was, I would try to find whatever small martial arts school was going on, and I would train that style. So I trained in, Aikido, Kung Fu, Taekwondo, pretty much anything you could think of. And I realized that there was a lot of common shared techniques, and that at a certain level, it's just style differences. It's just my teacher does it slightly this way, and there's not really a function behind it. I also had this experience in my black belt test for karate where there was a self-defense component, and we used to do these one-punch, defense scenarios, and a guy threw 2 punches and just punched me right in the face, and I got a black eye. So I had a black eye for my test the next day, and I was not feeling very confident in my self-defense after that. I was thinking, I have this black belt, but I don't really feel like I can fight. I don't feel like I can defend myself. I should be able to deal with 2 punches, and so kind of started this journey as I was moving around. It was also just fun. I enjoyed martial arts and I wanted to learn more about it. So I was looking for a style that was going to fulfill, be a good workout, be fun, but also kind of have that function to it. I was a gymnast and a dancer growing up. So at first the karate was just kind of, it was a performance thing. I did tournaments and did katas and things like that. And if you could do flips and katas, you would win tournaments. It was not necessarily a function thing. And so I enjoyed doing that for a while, but then I wanted to find something that was going to actually work if I needed it, and or just a little more hands-on. And I accidentally went to MMA group in Alaska. It was at a rec center, and I thought it was a Taekwondo class. So I showed up in my white gi, my little white karate gi and white belt. And it was just guys in board shorts and rash guards boxing and doing cardio circuit and stuff. And I actually got knocked off my feet the first night in class boxing, because I had only done point sparring really, and did a really hard cardio workout, and I just really enjoyed it. Grappled a little. I ended up getting more hooked on the grappling part because you just don't take the damage that you do standing up. Back then it was just kind of like you sparred your first night on the mat. So I was getting beat up quite a bit in stand up, and so I was kind of ended up leaning more toward the jiu-jitsu part.
Do you remember you said you kind of got hooked on jiu-jitsu. Do you remember what it was that drew you to that other than not taking damage? Was it?
Well, I had grappled a little bit in the karate style I did. We had some throwing, and I really always enjoyed the throwing part. There was an Aikijitsu component, which is kind of a little like judo, and that was my favorite part. I love the throwing, and occasionally we'd do a little groundwork, but there was no one there who really knew it that well. It wasn't anyone's specialty that I'd worked with, but that was my favorite part. I liked it above the punching and kicking. And so I trained some judo too, and that was fun, but I hadn't been in a school where they really sparred much. It was all kind of these static throws, so jiu-jitsu was the first experience I had where it was just free form sparring, where you were just trying to react to your opponent and you got into that state of flow. I'm a snowboarder too. I compare it to like riding powder. You're just completely engaged and time kind of stops, and that's addicting. Anyone who rolls has hit that spot, and you want to get there as often as you can. So it was this, same with surfing. If I actually catch a wave surfing, it's kind of that similar feeling. And so I wanted to do it as much as I could. And just a lot of fun. I love the camaraderie part. I love the people that you meet. You meet such cool people. I've done a lot of traveling associated with it too. So it just kind of encouraged it.
Could you tell me a little bit about your competition history?
Sure. I had my first competition in Montana, and that was actually the first girl I ever rolled with was in a competition, because it was just all guys at that rec center in Alaska. And then I came down to Montana to work, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's not going to be a jiu-jitsu school in Montana. And it happened to be the Straight Blast Gym was opening that year. Travis Davison, my coach, had broken off of the gym in Portland from his coach. He was one of the first homegrown Portland black belts through Straight Blast Gym. Him and his brother were, and he moved with his family and opened the gym in Montana. So I happened to be there as he was opening it. I was really lucky. And so there were like 5 or 6 guys and me. Some of them had done MMA or wrestling. And so the first time I went to a tournament, there was actually a girl for me to roll with. And so that was pretty cool. I won one match, lost the other one. And I ended up training in Montana a couple more years, and then going to Oregon, doing some small local tournaments there. And then as a blue belt, went to Worlds the first time. And I've competed twice at blue belt, at purple belt, and then at black belt at Worlds. And I've medaled each time. I won Worlds at blue belt, which was pretty cool. I didn't realize what a big deal it was at the time. I always have relatively small brackets, but they're all tough girls too. There's no easy matches at Worlds. And then I was hurt during a lot of my brown belt time, so I didn't get to compete at brown belt. But as a black belt, I've competed twice now at Worlds and once at Pan Ams, and it's just a whole other level. That was a huge jump in ability of my opponents, all the way up through your belts. You're rolling against people that are relatively, they've been doing jiu-jitsu relatively the same amount of time as you. And then suddenly at black belt, you have people that have been a black belt as long as you've been doing jiu-jitsu. It's just a Shark Tank. It's a very different feeling, and there's this huge variation in ability levels. And, with new black belts, they kind of go back and forth. And then, you touch hands with somebody who's been, like I said, training twice as long as you, and it's just a different feeling. And I learn a lot. There's nothing quite like rolling with another female black belt. You don't get that experience very often. That's one of the reasons I really like to compete is as a female, you don't get to roll with someone your own rank and weight very much. You have to kind of go and find those girls, and they'll cluster together at a tournament or a camp or something. But other than that, we're pretty spread out. We're like unicorns.
Leah, how do you prepare for that mentally to step on the mat and compete with somebody who's, like you said, they've been a black belt as long as you've even known this existed? It's just an amazing gap in potential ability of that other competitor. How do you prepare mentally for something like that and not give them too much respect as far as kind of psych yourself out mentally before the match even starts?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I have had some crazy matches in terms of my absolute matches. You can choose to do the black belt absolute. It's before your weight class now, because so many people would just leave after their weight class. They had all these empty brackets. So now if you compete in the black belt absolute and you don't show up, you can't do your weight class, which is after that. But it's also a risk because you're competing in the absolute before your actual weight class. So, there'll be 14 to 16 girls that choose to do that. And I had my first match at Pan Am's in black belt was against Mackenzie Dern. Then I had Michelle Nicolini at Worlds. I got to compete against her in her last Worlds. And then my last absolute match was against Bia Mesquite, so I got to go against arguably three of the top girls in the world ever. So that was pretty awesome. And, I was excited the night before. I'm like, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to get to have a match with, the best person in my field. And there aren't many other sports that you can do that in. It's a pretty small community. So I learned a lot, in those matches, and, did my best jiu-jitsu. I didn't have any regrets leaving any of those matches. I did my best. And it was a pretty cool experience. This was the best I felt mentally for any tournament, actually. And, did a lot of visualizing, a lot of, tournament style matches where I had someone coaching and a ref at the gym. And then I introduced, some meditation for the first time, some mindfulness, which really did help, leading up to it.
I'd like to get a little bit deeper into that, Leah. So what does this meditation look like?
It's pretty simple. My sister suggested it. She's a counselor, and, you get pretty worn out just with multiple sessions a day. And I also coach a lot. I'm not a full-time competitor. I coach quite a bit during the week and have some other things I do at the gym. So, as your training schedule ramps up, just like anyone who does jiu-jitsu and has another job, your work-life balance tends to get a little skewed. You get really tired. And I was talking to her about that, and she said, it would be good for you to kind of do a reset either at night in the morning and just kind of clear your head so you can focus a bit more on the task at hand. So I just had been using the Headspace app, which is, there's a free version of that where you're just taking 10 minutes and clearing your head at the end of the day. And doing that before I competed was really helpful, just taking a little rest. And it's almost like, your brain's like a chalkboard, and they'll just get this writing and kind of get really crowded. And if you can just kind of erase it, it has room to kind of reset and add new things. So that was kind of how I visualize it anyway. And it's been helpful for me. It's a new thing for me. So I'm hoping I can continue to do it and take it a little further. It's helped in other aspects of my life as well.
Leah, I've heard that, meditating is very important. It gets you so many benefits mentally and sharpness and focus and just the list is huge, but I just can't get myself to do that. The app is an interesting option because it seems like it's kind of like it it guides you through something like that? Is there
It
somebody
tells
talking
you exactly
to you or
what
what?
to do. Yeah, there's this really soothing British voice talking you through it and tells you exactly what to do, and it's only 10 minutes. And I'm at a point where I really can only manage 10 minutes. There are people who do it much longer. And I think at a point you get to a level where you don't need someone to guide you. And I think that would be the idea. And, the app has an option where you can pay and, have these guided sessions that are a little more specific. They're supposed to increase, creativity or reduce stress, so you can kind of follow it that way. I haven't gone that far with it, to be honest. It's just something that I'm trying to make into a routine. I do it at night, and that has helped me get to sleep sooner, and I wake up feeling more refreshed, more present, kind of let some of those nagging, stressful thought loops go.
Wow, that's cool. I'll look into that, and it just sounds like an easier way to do something that I know that is good for me, but it just always seems, I don't know, hard to get to be a habit.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you said that you felt good before these and the black belt division. Were you meditating before those, or is this newer than that?
It was before this tournament. I started probably 3 weeks out. At my sister's suggestion,
okay.
And I would just do it every night. And then I also did a session just right before I competed in the absolute division, and that was the match against Leah. And we had all this downtime when we got to the tournament, and that's a difficult part of jiu-jitsu tournaments that you have to manage, and it's different than any other sport. You have so much time in between matches and before matches sometimes where you're walking around with your competitors. You're seeing all these people that you are going to have a death match with in 20 minutes or something, and then sometimes your bracket times change, your mats change, and so you have all these little things that are kind of increasing your stress level if you allow it to. So I was able to just kind of lay down under the bleachers. There's kind of a matted area there, and just take a second and go through one of those and just reset. And then I rolled a bit with my teammate, Amanda Lowen, who was also competing. It was very cool. So it's always cool to compete in the same tournament and mat as her. My dream would be at one point we're just both going to hit the podium, hit gold at the same tournament. That would be really cool. We did it a lot in coming up through local tournaments, but I want to do it, at black belt. That would be really cool to have us both be at that level. So I was able to warm up with her. And then the twins, Stella and Ricky Davison, have been training for about 10 years. They're my coach's children, and they had their first tournament at juvenile blue belt, which looks like the black belt division when you watch it. These kids are career jiu-jitsu players. They've already, some of them just are homeschooled, and they do jiu-jitsu. And their division was amazing to watch.
Wow, that's incredible. You mentioned a little bit ago that you were excited to compete against compete in the black belt division. That the women that you have been watching for years, and how you used the word. I don't know if you said excited, but you weren't nervous for it. You're ready to do this. Is that the type of emotion or that type of feeling that I think that's helpful versus everyone's gonna be nervous, but you could switch it out for excitement to showcase your skills and to have a match with somebody who is very good?
I do, yeah. Especially with a match like that, I have nothing to lose, so I just go out and roll my best, and that's usually the attitude I take. And I've been competing on some level since I was, like 8 or 9. I did a lot of gymnastics competition, and I was a competitive diver for a little while, and those are individual sports where you're the only one out on the mat. So it's a lot of mental pressure. If you screw up, everyone's watching, and so you kind of get over that at an early age. So I don't get too nervous for competing. I would say my very first black belt competition, I really got in my head, and I made kind of a silly. That's the only one that I got super nervous. I really played up my opponent in my head because she had been training so much longer than me, and I ended up kind of choking myself, just making kind of some rookie mistakes. And I've been much more present since then. Once you get those first few matches out of the way, it's all right. But it's going to be a big jump, and that was kind of a big deal to me. I didn't totally feel need to get my black belt there, so that was kind of playing in my head.
Yeah, and I think that would affect anybody, but it sounds like you're doing well in the division. Could you maybe describe the type of game you like to play when you're competing?
Yeah, I came up more as a guard player. I've definitely gotten more into spider guard as I've come up through the ranks. So kind of developing those pathways has been really fun and interesting to me, and I've had success with it. And then my game has kind of changed recently because I've been working more on takedowns for MMA, takedowns, wrestling, and judo. So I'm feeling a lot more comfortable coming up on top and, fighting for a takedown at the beginning of the match, which is something that I never did, competing all the way up through black belt. So I'm starting to feel again like I'm approaching that point of being more of a full martial artist.
All right, you just mentioned MMA. What's going on with your MMA career?
Well, I've had one amateur fight at this point in Billings, Montana. It was for a really cool promotion called the Fusion Fight League, and the guy actually put on an all-women's fight card, which is really rare. It's tough to hold it together, and it's hard to replace fighters, and he put on an all-women's fight card, so I had two of my teammates on the card with me, which was really awesome. It was just a great vibe in the gym, and, we really supported each other through the whole process. Got a lot better at MMA and jiu-jitsu through that process. Really hit some mental barriers as well. MMA created a lot more anxiety for me. There's just something different about being held down and punched rather than just being held down, so I had to overcome some, I actually had a couple full-on panic attacks in practice and had to kind of learn how to manage that. I have a really good coach here who's also a counselor that was able to kind of give me some ways to focus while that was happening. So for anyone who's had a panic attack, you feel like your throat's closing up, you start hyperventilating, and it's kind of a feedback loop that you're stressed out, and so you can't get out of that physical state. And I'd never had that happen in jiu-jitsu, like maybe a little bit at my black belt Ironman, which was like over 2 hours. But I hadn't thought much of it. And then it happened a couple times in practice here, but it hasn't happened in a while. It's something that I'm able to kind of head off as I feel myself starting to get into that bad thought pattern and kind of curb it and focus a little more.
Is it more of the thought pattern or the more of the, I'm kind of stuck here and I'm not able to defend myself in the situation? Or is that cause the thought pattern, you think?
There were, a couple key ingredients. I realized I have to be really taxed cardio-wise, which MMA is so much more physically intensive than jiu-jitsu. You can't rest. It's just a higher pace. And I have to be, kind of close to my cardio breaking point, which is going to happen more in like an hour and a half. We have an hour and a half practice. It's going to happen more there. I don't necessarily anticipate myself getting to that point in a 3-minute round fight. But in practice, we're really pushing it. And I would have to get into a scenario where I felt like there was nothing I could do. As soon as I have that kind of thought process, I could feel my breathing start to change. And so this coach had instructed me to try to focus on something physical in the room that'll just take you out of that loop. So, just looking at the mat and saying, that mat is red, there's a small ding in the mat over there, or, being able to just kind of come out of your own head for a second and focus on what you're doing. And as I'm learning more what to do in each position, that's happening less and less too. It would be when I felt a bit lost and I was unable to defend, and you feel like there's not a way out of that situation. So it really is a mental thing. I thought at first it was physical. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm developing asthma or something. And my coach was like, no, this is in your head. And it took me a while to even admit that because I'd never had it happen. And I'm like, I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt. I should be calm under pressure, but it was a different level of pressure. It was just it's a different sport. It's very intense, very intense.
That you kind of answered my question. I was wondering if you had this experience early on in jiu-jitsu and you never really did until you put the gloves on and ended up getting pushed physically.
Yeah, no, never. Wow. Never. The first time it happened, I was being held in mount and punched. And, it was a guy bigger than me, stronger. And I just had this thought, I'm like, I can't get out, and he wasn't hitting me that hard, but I was exhausted, and I couldn't get out, and I felt like I should have been able to. And started this really bad breathing pattern, and I'm walking around to my coach and I'm like, I can't breathe. And he said, stop hyperventilating. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm not, I just can't breathe. We had this kind of argument back and forth, and, it happened like maybe another couple times to that level. And like I said, I worked with a coach. I actually put on one of those crazy, breathing masks. Have you seen those that you look like Bane from Batman?
Oh yeah.
I don't know how much they help with altitude training, but it did tax me enough oxygen-wise. We're on pads. I could kind of start to get to that point, and we could work backwards from that, and start to control that process.
Wow. It's an interesting thing. I think I'm just a jiu-jitsu guy. I pretty rarely will put on any gloves and do something like that, but that feeling of being stuck and being hit is strange. And very scary very quickly. And you see people that will just, they're not doing any damage, but they're not used to being in that spot and not being able to move and defend themselves. Even though there's no damage, a lot of time panic does set in. And that's a good example of why you got to train.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
You could train through that, it sounds like.
Yes, it's better now. We have a coach visiting now. Actually, he's a black belt in Chicago. He's going to be opening a gym soon called, his name is Paul Sharp, and he does a lot. He's a police officer. He's been a SWAT team member, and he's been an undercover police officer. He talks about, every time you train, you put a deposit in the mindset bank. So you get a little bit more mentally resilient every time you train. Every time you push yourself, every time you allow yourself into a vulnerable position, you build that knowledge that you can survive that position, and you get a little bit stronger.
Yeah. Let's take that idea and look at women's self-defense and what jiu-jitsu can do with that, as far as if you're training jiu-jitsu, you're learning and getting better, but also you're able to maybe mentally get through something that is hard, or it may seem impossible, but you have the skill and you have the mental fortitude to or just the knowledge of how your body works to defend yourself. I'd like to hear your thoughts on women's self-defense and what jiu-jitsu could do for that.
Yeah, we offer 2 free self-defense clinics a year here in Montana, and we'll have about 70 women on the mat each time. And it's not a very big city, it's not a big valley. And so we'll pack the mats, and I consider it one of the most important things I do as a female martial artist. I think that the information that we deliver even during those 3 hours could save lives. And again, it's mostly from Paul Sharp, who he's run classes for women who are going to work in prisons, self-defense and, just situational awareness information for those type of people. So he is the one that most of the material came from, and it was just really helpful. We spend a lot of time, the first part of the seminar is just working on getting women to walk with confidence. Your posture and the way you carry yourself will do far more to keep someone away from you than learning 1,000 techniques. So when people select victims, they're looking for people who look lost, who look distracted, who look like they might be injured and a little bit vulnerable. They've done victim selection studies where people who are convicted criminals watched videotape, and they wouldn't necessarily pick people who were smaller or female. They would pick people who looked like their gait was a little bit off, their gaze was kind of darting around, and those are the people that got selected more often. So we work just on walking smoothly and being really aware of your posture. He talked about if you feel lost or you feel less confident, he's like, that's the time to walk like you own the earth. Fake it till you make it. And other people don't know, looking at you, that you don't know where you are unless you betray that in your body language. So we work a lot on just that idea and surrounding yourself with good people who are going to take care of you, who are taking care of themselves. And that will keep you out of most bad situations, which is a sure way to make sure that you stay safe, right? Is if you don't even get into the situation.
Yeah, the 2 things you mentioned, walking or just carrying yourself with that confidence. Nobody knows, looking at anybody on the street, if they have the jiu-jitsu ability of Lea Taylor. Like, you can't tell by looking at somebody if they could defend themselves. So if you appear that way physically by carrying yourself that way, they can't say that she can't defend herself. They don't know. And
Yes.
most people who are attacking strangers, they want somebody who is unable to defend themselves. They're really looking for
Right.
that victim. And then the other part of it was surround yourself with good quality people that will help you. And that's not, to me, that's not just, help me in a bar so should some stuff go down. But really, if you're in a bad relationship, they're telling you this guy is bad news, or they're helping you kind of just steer your life in the right way, because a lot of the self-defense things are like situational as far as who you're spending your time with or where you're going with your friends and those sort of things. Because a lot of like domestic, I guess, is one way to say that. So those are two. I think that's two great pieces of advice about self-defense.
Yeah. You're far more likely to be assaulted by someone you know. Unfortunately, there's this idea that there's the boogeyman out there and there's these random attacks that happen. And that's actually incredibly rare. It's like an 8 out of 10 chance that it's someone you know, a friend of a friend, a neighbor, a family member, unfortunately. And they are also able to bridge distance a lot more quickly. They can approach you because they already know you, and then they're close enough to put their hands on you. So we do talk about, we get into, okay, what if someone does grab you? And we teach very simple wrist breaks. All of our self-defense that we teach is based around getting the person to escape. We're not trying to, you can't teach someone to win a fight in 3 hours. Being a jiu-jitsu black belt, I'm not going to engage in a fight if I ever got caught in a self-defense situation, which honestly would be hard, because when I go somewhere public, a lot of times I have all my teammates around me. So they're going to have to make it through like 3 other black belts that are men before they get to me. So, it depends on, again, it's who you're surrounding yourself with. Everyone has friends or family that are constantly getting into bad situations. It's like they have bad luck, quote unquote. At a certain point, it's their decision-making process. And if you hang around those people, even if they're close to you long enough, they will suck you into those type of scenarios. So you need to distance yourself from those people. So we have, we'll ask that question, and I'll have women that are crying in the room because they are really reassessing their life. Who are they with? Who are they around? I've had women show up that are actively being beaten by their partner, and they want some tools to be able to survive in their home. Like they're not at a point where they're ready or able to leave, and they're coming there to learn how to fight for like that day, which is so crazy to think about. But I've had that happen. Probably at least one person in each group comes and talks to me, and they're in that scenario already.
Well, that's incredible. That I can't. Fortunate enough to grow up in a loving home, and I have a wife I love, and we have a very good relationship. But I can't imagine somebody being in a situation that's not even a home. That's a place where you're living, where you're afraid to be, and to go to a jiu-jitsu seminar and like, I got to learn how to defend myself from this guy who I live with and spend all my time with this idiot. That's like trying to put a Band-Aid on like a huge wound. The correct solution is to not be in that situation. And like you said, you can't always control, you may not be able to get out right away, but learning how to fend off one attack when there's going to be another one next week, you just gotta remove yourself from that place eventually, and hopefully in a safe and soon way. It
takes years to create that scenario. When that person got together with their partner, they probably weren't treating them that way, but it's a slow manipulation over time, and they isolate them from their friends. They make them feel like they should be ashamed, like it's their fault. And it's a very subtle mental manipulation that can last years. We had a woman that had been with a partner for about 20 years, and she's been abused for the better part of that. And she got to the point where she, if her partner was drunk, could hold him down. She took judo and jiu-jitsu with us. She could hold him down and restrain him till he got tired enough that the altercation was over. But she was having, physical fights with him each week, and she actually got to the where she could manage him. She could, take him down basically and pin him until he was exhausted enough where they were just done with it. And she's leaving now at this point, but 20 years of that, she had children. It was not until she came to our school that she found the confidence, the self-confidence and the strength, and just started thinking of herself more as a fighter, as a warrior, and less as a victim. So we really try to change people's mindset in that 3 hours. We start that process at least and just plant that seed. And we try to get them to train with us more. If we say, okay, so you're doing these things for 3 hours one weekend, but is it going to be automatic? If you don't train it, you don't own it. And so we encourage them to train with us. And I have had a handful of women that do, and I can see the shift in their body language and their the way that they think of themselves. And they build this whole new network of friends that are going to watch their back.
Wow. I appreciate it. Sounds like you're doing really good work over there and helping a lot of people and women on and off the mat. I mean, that's an incredible thing to think about, that somebody was in a relationship like that. I know that happens all the time, all over the world. 20 years, and this guy's been she's now able to control him. I can't imagine sleeping in the same house as somebody who I would fear attacking me. I mean, I don't know if I could relax enough to go to sleep. And
she wrote a long letter to us about it because it's very recent that she's getting this divorce, and she attributed her kind of the beginning of her switch. She was sitting listening to my coach talk on the mat, and he was saying, you don't have to be a victim. You don't have to think of yourself as a victim. Like, you can be the aggressor, you can be on the offensive, and that's a mindset. And he was talking about jujitsu, but she applied it to her own home scenario, and that was kind of the beginning of a switch for her.
The victim mentality is also something that you have to watch out for. You want to get that control back, and but bad things happen to people all the time. But just to feel like that you have no control and you're going to play that role as the victim, that could be very detrimental to you long term as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So self-defense classes, it sounds like they're a huge success. A lot of women on the mats. How do you bring some of them that want more into training jiu-jitsu? Is it they just come into regular class day one, or do you have a women's thing set up for them, or how does that work?
We have such a great beginner program here now, and that has evolved over a lot of years. The first day I came in, I just rolled the first day, which is how most jiu-jitsu schools are set up. And that's not a scenario that's going to be successful for most people. If they're already an athlete in another sport, or they've wrestled or something, they will maybe make it through that process, without getting hurt or frustrated. And for women, that the few that come into those schools, that's probably not going to work out. And so we have a really great beginner program where the students just drill to begin with. They don't roll, so they don't spar for a few months. And at first I thought, when we introduced this program a few years ago, I'm like, this is going to create people who don't know how to spar. It's going to create people who are, they don't know, they're not going to be as strong or tough or whatever. And instead, people are just way more prepared, and we keep way more people in the gym. Our beginner class at night is about 20 people. 10 of them are women right now. We have an accurate representation of the population outside of the gym. We have a huge kids program. We have women and men in every single class. There's not like that one girl that's in the class. Like, we have a bunch of women, and it's not my class. The instructor's male, and some of them met me or did the self-defense class first, but a lot of them just joined on their own, and they look out on the mat, they see all these women already doing it, and it invites them to feel like they can do it too. Once they are ready to roll, we have a coach roll with them first, and they learn the etiquette for open mat. They learn how hard they should roll. I talk to them, especially if they're female, about partner choice. It's not necessarily great to do a warm-up roll with a new white belt. That's a big guy. So be a little more choosy with partners. And then my women's class, I do have an active women's class, is actually an advanced class. So once they're starting to roll, they can come into the women's class, and they have a space where once a week we can work on techniques that are specific more to smaller grapplers. And we also have some time to roll. So these ladies have an opportunity to roll with someone their own size, their own strength, and the matches look completely different. You just see way more of their jiu-jitsu. You see more turnovers, there's scrambles. They can actually use a little bit of attributes, whereas you have to be more conservative when you're rolling with someone stronger, faster than you. It makes your jiu-jitsu more defensive over time.
It sounds like you have a beginner's class that's not just for women, but it's half women, which is really kind of a neat thing, the way that's worked out. And then
I've never seen that anywhere else.
Yeah.
Ever. I've been to a lot of other gyms. I've never seen that, and I was shocked when it's kind of grown to that point here. It's awesome.
Is that supported, those numbers supported by the self-defense program that brings in a handful of women every 6 months or so, or is that
it helps. I would say about 3 or 4 of them maybe total have come from that are of that group, but the rest are just, they're coming in on their own for whatever reason. When people come in, they usually have a reason that they're in there. And for women, it's different. A lot of times they just want to get in shape. They want to be more confident. I don't have a lot of women coming in saying like, I want to learn to fight. More of the guys come in with that kind of attitude,
Yeah, that's an interesting, I guess, draw towards jiu-jitsu, why people do it. And the guys have that attitude, and the women often will seek other reasons. After the way, so I could, if I was a woman, which I'm not, but okay. So I want to join your gym, and I start off with the beginners class, not the women's class, but the actual women's class is an advanced class that you run, right? So it'll be a while before I'd even be able to get into that.
Yeah, it evolved that way. At first I had it as a beginner class, but I really wanted it to be a space where the women could have some time to spar. And so that's why it just ended up being an upper level class. So the women that come in, we can work on some upper level techniques, and we can spar, we can work on takedowns, and they have the skills to be able to fall, to be able to roll without instruction. They know how hard to go. They've already done it in other open mats and had that instruction. So it's just a little less of an introduction that way.
I also like the first rolling with a coach, and that really teaches you not just like technique wise how to roll, but what's expected of you while you roll, and kind of the intensity and the attitude and keeping things safe. And like, okay, here's my coach rolling. Is my coach trying to murder me? I might be getting choked several times, but I feel safe with this. I don't really feel like a lot of aggression and hostility. So I think that's a good way to make sure that you kind of filter everybody through the beginners class, and you've really developed a culture of safe training that's also very effective.
Yes, it's helped so much. Everyone gets so angry at new white belts because they're doing things that they shouldn't, but they don't know. Most of the time, they don't know until someone tells them. And a lot of times we're trying to stop that kind of cycle of smashing that happens. If somebody rolls too hard or they do something they're not supposed to, someone else will just, crush them in the next roll. And if they lacked the self-awareness to know that they were doing that, probably the roll they got crushed after that, they didn't really notice that either. They just think that that's how you should roll at that point. So it just creates this cycle, and they just do it to other people. So now, and it shouldn't be students on the mat. It needs to be a coach that's aware enough of what's happening with matches on the mat. They need to take that person aside and sit down and say that's not an appropriate intensity, or that technique isn't okay, or you need to hold back some attributes on that person. And that way it doesn't put the student in a bad situation where they're expected to do that. And, you need less enforcers on the mat, so to speak, in that case. And I used to be just really old school about it. And I had this experience where I was drilling with a new white belt, and he was going so hard, and I ended up just like knee riding him. And I told my coach after, we might have to kick that guy out of the school. He went so hard. He was almost kicking me to death. And he's like, well, did you say something to him? And I said, no, I just knee rode him. And he's like, well, he probably didn't get it, So said something to him the next time, totally changed the way he drilled. He just brought it way back down. He just didn't know how hard to go. And he was a very well-intentioned person. He wasn't someone who was malicious or anything like that. He's just very strong and didn't know, I was a black belt, so he thought he should drill really hard with me. And I was like, oh, maybe we should just use our words,
Yeah, speaking like to the male female, being a guy, tell me something in a clear, simple way, and maybe I'll get it. But if you just beat me up, like, yeah, like, and I've been there a million times too. Yeah, somebody's rough with, you see him almost too hard with this kid over here. Yeah, I'm gonna really take it to him and really, teach him a lesson. You didn't teach him anything. You just beat him up. It's just
an ego. It helps your own ego. It makes you feel better for a second. You feel like you impacted the world positively, and that's not true. I had a guy, white belt, I was sparring with, and I was being kind of, too relaxed, and he grabbed my belt and threw me, and he just picked me up. It wasn't like a technical throw, and pretty much put his shoulder through my sternum, like followed me down to the mat. And as I was on the way down, I'm like, this is going to be so bad for him, and I like took his back and choked him super hard, and I submitted him a couple more times, and I'm like, yeah, okay, now he gets it, right? About 10 minutes later, he did it to one of my white belts, who was a girl, and she was about my size. I was about his size, so she was the same size as both of us, but she didn't know how to fall. And he put his shoulder through her sternum, and she got the wind knocked out of her. She was crying. She felt awful, and I watched that, and I was like, why didn't I have that conversation with him? I absolutely could have prevented that experience for her, or at least mitigated it. And instead, I went on a little ego trip and, made sure I submitted him really great, good job. So that was pretty instructive for me. So now whenever I have that experience, rather than, I'm going to try to bring down the pace of the roll, and I'm going to have a conversation with that person. And again, it should be a coach. That shouldn't be students that are having to do that policing.
Yeah. And it takes the confidence of the coach, or maybe not coach, but just upper belt or a skilled grappler to be able to say, that's not what we're doing here. Because I think at the lower level, you really want to be able to, people want to prove themselves, and you're tough, but it takes the confidence of the person who's been on the mats, who's competed, like you've competed against the best in the world. Say, hey, we're not doing that. We're training, and we're going to be safe, and we're going to respect each other as training partners. And I'm not trying to wimp out of this. This is not what we're doing, though. And I think that takes, I don't know if it's, it just takes a different mindset as far as training. And I think you saw that your training partner did that, or that guy did it to a different person, actually hurt her a bit more. You're like, yeah, I should have done that. I already beat him up, but it doesn't really matter because he still thinks this is okay.
It was literally 10 to 15 minutes later. It was like 2 rounds later. And, it was just so obvious that, I didn't handle it appropriately. And yeah, you kind of have to have that moral authority, that respect or status as a coach on the mat, I think, to have that conversation and, not feel like you're exposing yourself in a bad way, I guess, or, the person's going to be more apt to listen to than if it's just an equal or lesser training partner. They're going to, they shouldn't have to have that conversation. So that means that your coach, whoever's on the mat, running that open mat, needs to be aware, and you need to be approachable enough for your students to feel like they can say that to you, or you're watching enough, even if you're rolling, to see those interactions happening.
Yeah. And when I'm at class and training, I roll pretty much every round I get a chance to, but occasionally, odd person out or something, and I'm watching, and if that behavior is seen between 2 other students, that's really easy to correct, because you're kind of stepping up for the person who's getting kind of rough handled a little bit too much, and saying, hey, slow it back a little bit there, and they don't have to ask the other person to slow it down, and they, it's just coming from an outside source, like a independent opinion that you're going too hard. And I think that helps too. And I just think that's a good opportunity for a coach to step aside and not always roll every round they can with all the students. Occasionally stand aside and watch people roll and see. Because I'm used to sometimes, let's say this purple belt always roll hard with me, and that's fine, that's great. But then occasionally, if I get to see the same person roll super hard with the white belt, this person never slows it down. They always go that way. So that needs to be fixed. and they need to adjust. Rolling hard's different than rolling kind of rude, I guess, but
right. Yeah, there's things where you're going to be hurting people. You know, when the person lacks control or they're doing things that are just mean, you know, grinding forearms into faces and eye sockets and stuff. You know, it's like not necessary, or stacking people super hard. You know, it's going to cause lasting damage, and there has to be a culture of trust on the mat. The mat culture is critical, and that's what's going to keep your students around longer. If people are getting beat up and hurt, they're going to quit, and they're not going to tell you why. They just leave. And then you have like 4 really gnarly people at your school. And you're like, good job. You know, we have hardly anyone rolling here. We have competition team practices. And the people who want to roll at a slower pace don't come to those. Those are the practices where you are going to be put with people that are closer to your ability or weight, or maybe heavier, and you're expected to go hard. And everyone knows those rounds are going to be like that. And, you know, you might get squished up a little bit, or have some harsher techniques pulled off in those mats. But an open mat, I don't think should necessarily be like that. If there's an agreement, or you're coming up to a competition, or you just know that's a partner that rolls hard and you can handle it, that's different. But there's a line for sure.
Yeah, and it's typically the a little bit newer student who's just looking to feel like they're doing good at jiu-jitsu, and they're having to kind of reach outside the boundaries of what is acceptable.
Right.
We're talking about filtering kind of students through a beginner's class, and when do you recommend somebody competes if that's something that interests them, and what benefits would that bring to their life or their grappling ability?
I would say it's good to compete in the first year, you know, later in that first year when you feel like you know, we have a positional rotation, so that, you know, once that person has been through those positions a few times, they should have a pretty firm base, have some idea what to do in each position. And, you know, you get less and less matches as you go up the ranks. So I say compete as much as you can as a white and blue belt, get that experience, learn from it if it's something you're interested in. I mean, we have people that some of our highest level coaches and practitioners have never competed or don't compete. And they are people who are self-reflective enough to shift their rolling during open mats. They will have things they're working on. They are willing to work on their weaknesses and lose. They are changing the way they roll based on those performances. So they are competing. It's just kind of on a local micro level. Whereas, you know, if you compete, it exposes your weaknesses, I think, in a harsher way, and it's someone that's your same weight and rank, so there's no excuses. There's no excuses as to why that person beat you that day, and that's one of our kind of things we instill even in our kids program. If you walk off the mat and you just lost, it was because that person was better than you. It's not because they were slightly heavier or you weren't feeling quite right. It's like they're better than you. They were better than you that match. Learn from it. Adjust. Don't tell people a story about it.
Do you think competing helps you develop as a martial artist?
I think so. And like I said, you compete if you're rolling in open mats. You know, you're trying to win those rolls. You know, you're trying to improve, and you're putting yourself in vulnerable positions because you're rolling with people better than you, heavier than you. You know, you're trying new things. Hopefully, if you're trying to improve, I think competing accelerates that process because you train intensively on what you're good at, and you have to rapidly improve your weaknesses so that they're not exposed on the mat. And the black belt division is just crazy because you'll have a little hole in your game, or you'll hesitate for just a second, and it just becomes, you know, you get submitted. It's not a little hole at that level. It's kind of like when you're lifting weights, you have these little form breaks when you're lifting lighter. And then as you add more weight, that little form break becomes this massive fail at a higher weight. So it's the same thing, you know, like with Bia, I just was managing to keep her from passing for a while. And she got the same reaction from me a couple times, which is going to be not a good thing. You have to adjust. It's that fight IQ, you know, can you adjust in real time? And the third time she kind of kicked off my spider guard, and I went to quarters to keep her from passing and getting those points. And I hesitated for just a second, and she already had her hooks in, and like my gi wrapped around my face. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? It was so fast. I could hear my coach saying, don't stay there. I didn't stay there that long. It didn't feel like it. I haven't watched the match yet, but little mistake, little hesitation. So normally it takes a long time for people to get their hooks in on me, but not for her. So that was, and it was a mistake I make in the gym, and I get used to settling there and kind of, recomposing or getting back to guard. And that was not okay. If you go to quarters, the black belt behind you, they're going to capitalize on that. So it was, it's instructive, and it's something that wasn't necessarily coming up at the gym, with who I was rolling with. So now I know that that's something I have to work on, and a couple other things, but it was just exposed in such a big way.
Yeah, I think that in a big way, like it has more weight on you. I can go roll for an hour, and then I get done. I can't tell you who I tapped and who tapped me. But if I competed, I'd imagine I'd remember like you the details of getting caught in something, and exactly what happened and how it felt. And I'd want to break it down and learn from that way more than just a roll where I happen to get caught.
Yeah. You have a video, you often have a coach watching, so you can go back through and really, see where you need to work on, and you can kind of start to develop more of an A game. I realized coming up to competition a couple times that I'd been working so much on things that I was weak on that I had forgotten, like, well, what is my, what's my go-to? If I'm really just trying to submit someone, I'm not just rolling around trying to figure things out. Where are my pathways, and I kind of had to reestablish those at black belt. And I really did go back to a lot of things I'd been using since blue belt. I think you start to build the core of your game then, and you just kind of expand on it.
Is there differences? Would you encourage a woman to compete just for the same reasons as when you were starting competing? You gotta go get on the mat with a woman. And so is that a pretty big advantage for if someone's considering competing, just maybe get more time with somebody similar size and weight and strength? And
absolutely, it's a big deal. I had a girl here who had trained at another gym for a long time where she was very small. She was 120 pounds or so, and she just got smashed all the time. And she was actually very strong, very fast, very good at jiu-jitsu, but she was just getting folded up all the time because she always had bigger training partners. And we just had a little in-house tournament here, and she competed for the first time against women. And she just dominated everyone. And she was crying after the match because she just thought she was really bad at jiu-jitsu. And she'd never had the experience of being able to pull off the technique that she knew. And she was, wow. I thought she was hurt or something. And I went over to her, and her boyfriend was there, and he trains too. And he said, no, she just thought she was really bad, and she was surprised at how well she did. She was kind of overwhelmed. And so, it's different if you don't have women at your gym to roll with. Absolutely go and find some people your own weight, your own ability level. And at local tournaments, you may end up making some friends too, local or regional tournaments. As the competition level rises, those people will become people you compete against again, just because there aren't very many women. So maybe you're not going to be best friends with those people, but locally you might make some like-minded friends.
Yeah, I like the story. She was surprised with how good her jiu-jitsu is. A lot of times, people get surprised at tournaments, but they're a little more disappointed or something like that. But she was shocked. Yeah, it works. I'm doing good. That's fun.
Yeah, she just rolled with big guys, and she joined my women's class after that and was able to make it a little bit more out to our gym and have those experiences where she was able to dominate, be on top and work on some of those things, but it was an experience for her. Yeah, it was a big turning point, I think.
That's a fun story. I would be kind of kicking myself if I didn't go into it a little bit more, because we mentioned that you've done an MMA fight. Is this something you want to pursue, or are you wanting to pursue competing jiu-jitsu or coaching more, or what's going on with your future in a year or two?
Yeah, I mean, I do want to take some more amateur fights just to have the experience. I've cornered MMA fighters. I helped corner Ash Daly in the UFC, so I've had this experience where I'm helping women cut weight. I'm helping them get ready for MMA fights, but I hadn't done it myself. So I really felt like I needed to have that experience to be a kind of legitimate coach, at least on some level, have the experience cutting weight and while training, while working, water loading sometimes. And so I wanted to do it for that reason. So that's more of just a side project, just to increase my knowledge. I don't plan on launching an MMA career. It's very hard on your body for sure. But I enjoy it. I'm going to do it for a little while longer for sure. I do take jiu-jitsu competition seriously, and I want to try to compete a bunch for the next few years while my body can handle it. I'm going to do Masters World for the first time this fall, and so I'm kind of excited about that. I haven't done it before. We're going to have a bunch of coaches from Straight Blast Gym all over the U.S. coming to compete, and I think we have like 6 black belts in there, which is a lot for us. So that's pretty cool. So definitely compete some more in jiu-jitsu, maybe do some no-gi, super fights where I can get them. And then eventually I would love to have my own gym. So that's the long-term plan. I'm learning how to do those things here, how to run a gym. There's a lot more to it than just coaching jiu-jitsu. Everybody wants to run a jiu-jitsu gym until they realize how much work it is behind the scenes. We have a really beautiful modern gym here where, like I said, we have children all the way up through people, later in life, and men, women, and I think that's when you walk into a gym, you see all different kinds of people, that's a good gym.
Yeah, absolutely. What classes are you currently teaching?
I coach, I've got my women's jiu-jitsu class. I teach a couple no-gi classes, no-gi jiu-jitsu that are a little more advanced. And I teach a beginner jiu-jitsu class. Mine's not actually, it's more men than women. I do have quite a few women in my class, but it's more men than women at noon. And then I teach a lot of fitness classes too. I've recently gotten into teaching strength and conditioning and more into lifting myself, which has been pretty awesome. And I would highly recommend any women particularly that are interested in doing jiu-jitsu long-term, starting to lift, gaining some strength to support their joints, and they'll just be less frustrated with the process. If they weren't already an athlete, it is difficult to develop the core and upper body strength that you need to move yourself. You don't need to move the other person, but you do need to frame and move your own body weight, which if you don't come in with that strength, it's a long, slow process to build it in jiu-jitsu, but you can do it much more quickly in lifting because that's what it is designed to do. It is designed to make you stronger. So I would say learn how to do that. Find a good place to lift that will show you how to do the lifts. Have a coach help you with that, and you'll be able to do the sport longer. And I think it'll just cut down on injuries. I wish I had started sooner.
The strength and conditioning side, are you teaching mostly grapplers or people who just want to come in and work out?
It's both. We have a lot of crossover between our grappling and our boxing program and our fitness program. And then we have, I would say the minority of my fitness students just do fitness. I do have some students that just do fitness, but most people do it as a supplement to their boxing or jiu-jitsu or yoga. I have a lot of yoga crossover students too. We have a yoga program at our school. Oh, that was something I didn't mention. I actually did yoga to prep for my last tournament as well. That was helpful. I do yoga each week, but I actually did a small practice right before I competed to kind of settle myself mentally.
Cool. You've done a lot. I wrote down here, but we kind of passed it. Your diving, you competed. Mm-hmm. What kind of diving did you do?
It was interesting. So I was a gymnast from when I was little, and I was very small until kind of late middle school. And I had this growth spurt where I grew 7 inches and I gained 45 pounds in 1 year. You can imagine the awkwardness. And I was suddenly huge on my gymnastics team, and I was like falling off the beam, and I could not get my steps right to get over the vault. And if you don't get over the vault, you just hit the board, and then you have to turn and just face the judge and stretch, and they just give you a 0. I had this terrible year, where I just could not figure it out. And I didn't even realize I was growing so much. I realized at my sports physical the next year, I just used to wear really loose clothes. I was a snowboarder. I've always been really into snowboarding. I taught snowboard lessons for like 16 years. I started when I was 16. And So I didn't even notice how much I was growing really. And at the end of this year, I was just giant, and it's very hard to be a gymnast when you're that tall. So I needed to do something else. So my senior year, I did diving, which is kind of like gymnastics with less consequences. If you totally screw up in the air, you just hit the water, which is way easier than hitting the mat. You know, people see these really hard slaps on the water, and I'm like, that is not that bad compared to like hitting the beam or hitting a bar, you know, if you mess up. So I was like, this is no problem. I don't mind getting, you know, some little welts. That's not a big deal. As you get better at diving, though, you get closer and closer to the board, and you start nicking the board. Like a good dive goes straight up and comes straight down in front of the springboard. And so it was a 1 meter board. So you're going like 10 feet in the air, and it feels like you're up there forever. And you just do all these flips and then come back. You want to come straight back down through the water. But because it was a new sport to me, it was just fun. It was low consequence. So I did it my senior year, and I just kind of enjoyed the process. And it was so funny. I can remember doing, one of the dives I would do was a double front flip. So you'd go up, do 2 flips, and ideally your feet would come down first into the water. Sometimes I would over rotate and come out just completely horizontal to the water. You know, if I would be going, I would get kind of amped and just go a little faster, and I would come out, and I would think that my feet were going to go in first. It's the weirdest feeling. Then your back hits and you're like, oh man, that's a failed dive. You come up and they're like, failed dive. You're like, yeah, I know that. I know. Failed dive, and they give you a 0. And, you know, like I said, I wasn't too attached to it though, but it was another competitive scenario where I was the only one out there, you know. So when I started jiu-jitsu, and I was like, oh, there's like 6 other rings going at once. No one's even watching me. This isn't a big deal. You know, obviously at black belt, there's a little more attention, but kind of got rid of those competition jitters early. But it was just another kind of cool way to stay active, and just gives you that state of like really intense concentration. You can't think about anything else when you're about to go 10 feet up and do a bunch of flips and twists.
Leah, you seem to have like a competitive spirit to you. You've competed and tried so many different things.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoy it. You know, it's, I love to, especially in open mats, you know, I have a few, it's good to have a few nemesises, you know. I don't know what the plural nemesis is, but it's good to have, you know, you have these people in the gym that you're like just really close to an ability, and there's a lot of trash talking that goes on to that. That's a fine art as well. And I have a couple here. I have a few back at the Portland gym, you know, because I went and trained with Matt Thornton for 4 years and got my black belt there, and then was able to come back to Montana and work and coach full time, which has been awesome. You know, it's where I started. And so yeah, I have a couple of guys, and a lot of times, you know, they'll be like there'll be different ranks, different ages, you know, and they like to roll hard, and you just have these death matches, and it's awesome because you just, you know, laugh a lot and talk a lot of trash in between. So that's, you know, one of my favorite parts of jiu-jitsu.
That's fun. Leah, could you give yourself a compliment as a competitor?
Okay. It's hard for me to give myself compliments. I'm trying to be better about it, or accept compliments with more grace. I would say that my guard is probably my strongest attribute in jiu-jitsu, and I feel very comfortable in that scenario, particularly, like I said, if I can get to that spider guard position, I feel like I have a lot of control, a lot of flow, and a lot of pathways from there. So I feel, I guess, most graceful when I'm in those positions. So I guess that would be my compliment.
Well, your guard. That's a good one to have. It's not difficult to get to spider guard typically. I'm sure at black belt level, it's hard to get your grips on people and get it just the way you like it. But it's not. It seems like a pathway to that is something you could be thinking about as you step on the mat to compete, to take away some of your nerves and give you some focus.
Sure. And if it's someone's A game, they'll have a lot of pathways to it, just like I have a lot of pathways to getting into that position. And I guess the other thing I would say is I always do my best. I leave everything on the mat. You know, I'm trying to finish matches. I don't roll for points. You know, I'm not gonna stall out someone just because I'm up on points. I'm gonna try to finish those matches. And you know, you see that in tournaments, sometimes someone will just kind of basically stop rolling, and I've had people stall me out. It's a frustrating thing, and it's just part of the points game. There's got to be some way of measuring if there's no submission. So it's a blessing and a curse, but I definitely try to finish my matches as well.
Yeah, people work the system, I guess, but having the attitude that you have is, I'm here to try to finish and win, not just win, but also finish. And I think that's part of the remedy to that problem of somebody just stalling out, saying, I'm winning, I'm just going to stay here. It's more of an attitude towards maybe the martial arts and wanting to do your best and leave it all that. You don't want to, same thing is you don't want to lose a match and feel like, well, I still had plenty of energy, I just didn't really just go for it at the end. The same thing is you don't want to win a match and feel like, I probably could have submitted that person, but I held back. It's the same feeling. You're trying to just leave it all out there and do your absolute best.
Yeah, and there's some high-level competitors that do that. I mean, you watch Mackenzie Dern. She's trying to finish every single match. Doesn't matter how many points she's up by. She just goes for it, And Bia, I would say, is like that as well. Some of the girls, if they know they're going to have a lot of matches, they have so many matches. I watched Bia that day, and she made it most of the way through the absolute. She had so many matches that day. It's a lot. So I can understand wanting to conserve energy to some extent. So I really admire people that are trying to finish all the way up. That's a different level. Yeah,
and that's it's also enjoyable to watch as well. Do you have any interest in doing?
Absolutely, yeah.
Like less tournaments, but more of a show. Like all these shows are coming up where they have competitors. Are you interested in those?
You mean kind of like the super fight promotions?
Yeah, like EBI or Fight to Win or something like that.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. I would love to do something like that, and I think I've put in an application for, Submission Underground. There's a Fight to Win happening in Seattle where my teammate Amanda Lowen is going to be competing, so I'm excited to watch her in the fall coming up. Actually, it might be pretty soon. I have to look at when that is, but there's a Seattle Fight to Win coming up. I should have looked at the date, but she'll be going against Cindy Hale, who's a Gracie Baja black belt and one of the original 12 American female black belts. So that should be a good match.
Cool. And those are something that you would be interested in doing. That'd be fun to see you.
Yeah, I would. I definitely would. It's hard to find opponents. There were 6 women in my weight class at Worlds. And you have to qualify for Worlds now, but, I'm 160 pounds, so I'm at the upper end of weight for women. I'm above average in terms of height and weight, so there are less women that are at that weight, and even less that do jiu-jitsu, so it's tough to find opponents.
Yeah, and another aspect of women's jiu-jitsu is the struggles to do jiu-jitsu, I think. You guys, it's amazing you guys have like 50-50 women and men mixed, but if you typically go to a jiu-jitsu class and there's a lot more men, I just think there's some hurdles there that aren't being addressed to get women on the mat and stay on the mat. And so when you go compete, if there's 30 guys in a division or 10 women, those 10 women are going through things that the guys didn't have to stay on the mat, to train hard and all these other things. I think it's just different, and it's not to be overlooked. The accomplishments are the same. There's just different challenges, I think, for sometimes the women off the mats that the guys don't have to address.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to write a blog as a follow-up to my other one about why it's so important to have a women's only class. I wrote that actually in response to an Facebook discussion that came up, and people were implying that a women's class would be less difficult, that there would be a lower level of jiu-jitsu, that those women better roll with men also, or they're not really going to learn jiu-jitsu, which I don't agree with at all. And our women's class is pretty gnarly, to be honest. Like, the women that come in are going to have hard matches. So it's not, we're working on technically advanced jiu-jitsu. It's not a beginner class, which there could be, and I don't think that would be a bad thing, but I think that's a real misconception that they would need men to push them. And women roll differently than men; they think differently than men, and maybe that's kind of controversial, but I think it's true. It's like I said, there's nothing like rolling with a female black belt. I can sort of replicate it rolling with smaller guys, but it's different. The flexibility level is different. The guard is better in some ways. Guard retention, I would say, not necessarily guard, and then women have to keep their arms in and their collar protected way earlier than men. I'd say lower belt women are harder to submit, because if someone gets a hold of your sleeve and you have less upper body strength, that's match ending. Like, you just lost right there. They're going to yank that arm out and they're going to arm bar you or choke you. And there's nothing you can do about it. So you have to learn to keep your arms in very early to have any success.
Wow. I never heard that. Never thought about that. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So it's different. So I'm going to write a little bit about that, because there's some things that you can do, even if you have no female instructors at your school, to get women in the door and to keep them there, for sure. And it's, again, about creating kind of a culture where they're going to be comfortable. And I think the people that read it are going to be the people that want to try to build that, and the people who are happy having, more of a garage style gym where it's just, 20 dudes who are in their early 20s just rolling hard. That's a gnarly mat. You can learn there. There might be one girl that survives in that environment, but it's not going to grow. If you really want to grow your gym, you have to change things a little bit. Yeah.
And in martial arts, they're for everybody. I'm happy that anybody's stepping on the mat, but the guys who are big and strong and who could defend themselves already just by just by being who they are, that's not what they're designed for. They're designed to help people defend themselves and learn this art and compete if you want to, that sort of things. But it's great to have jiu-jitsu working for all types of people. And I do, women's classes, whether they're beginner, advanced, what skill level they're at, I think they really do help grow that at the school. And
right.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of nice that you have so many women in the beginners class that's showing. As I walk in as a woman, again, I just kind of oddly call myself a woman, but as a woman walks in, like, it's not unusual for me to be in here. It's there's 4 guys and 4 women, and I'm one of them. Like, you're not questioning yourself, like, what am I doing here with these 20 guys that are all sweating and we're on the mat?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's really cool.
It is. It's taken a long time to get to that point here, and it's to that point in Portland too. We just recently had like 7 female blue belts,
Wow.
advance.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like, it was so cool. And that was, those women started when we shifted the gym to having that beginner program and allowing them to develop some survival skills before they're just thrown into an open mat.
Yeah. If everybody kind of does, obviously, not all the gyms are the same, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, I like having, not different things for different people, but it'd just be amazing if half the people doing jiu-jitsu were women. And it would just be, it's just be incredible the differences that the culture in jiu-jitsu would make, and the tournaments would be a lot different as well. But just how much benefit people would be getting out of it, I think would be really great.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's growing. I think there are more women that do it every year. Partway through my career, there was the shift from having a combined brown and black belt division at Worlds to finally there were enough women to have a black belt division, and then they created 2 new weight classes, a really light one and finally a heavyweight one. So it used to be just the weight class right above mine was just unlimited. So if you were above 160 pounds, you were just in with everybody, which is crazy. Now they have up to 175 pounds, but it was, the sport's growing. There's enough women to have those weight classes now, which is cool. Yeah.
And it's growing because I think people are getting smarter at helping women train and the business side of it. Like you said, you can have a gym full of tough people, but or full of, tough, mean guys, but you've also chased away a lot of other potential, customers.
Right. And those are additionally the guys that are going to get good. They could get good anywhere.
Yeah.
Those guys could get good anywhere. You're not doing anything extraordinary as a coach if you have, the top 10% of your local population that were going to get good wherever they walked in.
Yeah, if you go recruit all your students from the top wrestling college and football, like all these, like you didn't create those athletes, and
Right. They were there. They didn't come up through your kids program. They walked in already tough and already strong, and you showed them some technique.
Yeah.
And
part of the beauty of coaching jiu-jitsu and seeing people develop and being part of that and really helping them become a better person. And, I agree.
Yeah. I agree. You see some big transformations in people. It really makes you self-reflect, I think, if you're in it long term.
Leah, we were talking before the show, and I was looking forward to kind of get to know you as we talked during the interview, and I really have enjoyed talking with you a ton. How could somebody follow you, keep up with you, what you're doing, and that sort of thing?
I'm very active on Instagram. My name there is Leah Taylor SBG, and then I have a Facebook page Facebook page also under Lea Taylor, and then I have a blog that's Lea Taylor BJJ. So pretty easy to keep track of on there, and you can personal message me if you're interested in having a seminar or sponsorship opportunities.
Awesome. So you're available to travel and to teach?
I am, yes.
Awesome. And hopefully, I couldn't imagine this hurting any of that. I mean, you're well-spoken. You seem like a great coach. And if somebody's able to get you out there and teach, I think they have a great time.
Well, thanks so much, Byron. It was really nice talking to you. I enjoyed our conversation. And if you ever find yourself up near Glacier Park, you should come in and have a roll at our gym.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you as well.
All right. Thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. That was great talking with Lea Taylor. I really appreciate her getting on the podcast with us. And it's going to be fun to watch her develop as a martial artist and continue to compete. I definitely urge you to go by her social media and follow her and connect with her through those ways. And really looking forward to, as a podcast, I guess, developing that relationship with kind of keeping in contact with her and watching her go. And as a fan, watching her compete. So really glad to get a hold of her. And it was a blast having her on the show. Gary, we have a different type of article this week, don't we, my friend?
We have an incredible article. And one thing I always talk about the news that, if you watch the news at home, you just see bad stuff. You see the person who got shot. You see the person who got kidnapped. There's so much good going on in this world, and it seems like it never makes the media. But what I like about this article is from the New York Daily News. So, I mean, this is a newspaper article, and I mean, it's just got good and great and awesome written all over it.
Yeah, and it's the title of the article is Bronx Teacher Uses Jiu-Jitsu Teachings to Keep Kids Out of Trouble, and that's really cool. What an idea of teaching kids jiu-jitsu, like getting these, and they're at-risk kids. They're kids that have had trouble before or are likely to get in trouble, and teaching them jiu-jitsu, not just for self-defense, but it teaches a lot of other things about how the world works and working hard, and like we were talking on earlier, about a team and relying with your teammates to get better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is awesome. It's a guy. He's a teacher at Bronxville High School, and he's a jiu-jitsu black belt, and that's his passion. But at days he gives lessons to students, and he's got at-risk students, and he's just, his mind's working. He's thinking about ways to help these kids out, and jiu-jitsu was the way he decided to do it. And I think it said he had a couple dozen students training with him each and every week, twice. It looks like he has 24 students, and they have twice weekly 90-minute classes, and it's just it's just awesome that he does this.
Yeah, Gary, the article is definitely a highlight of what jiu-jitsu can do for people who, I guess for anybody really, but he's really targeting kids who are having some tough times, and he's really getting a lot to them and changing their lives potentially for a lot better. But I'm going to ask you some questions here, Gary, and it doesn't talk about these in the article at all, but I'm just going to just throw some questions at you and see how you feel about this. Gary, do you think that when these kids are rolling, that he makes them roll super hard every time and just like, train as hard as they can and never tap until it's way too late, that sort of training, or do you think it's more laid back?
Oh, I think it's definitely more laid back. I just, I bet he's, I bet it's not just teaching jiu-jitsu, he's teaching about life, I would assume. Yeah. When he's doing it. And I mean, life isn't always about going 100 miles an hour, straight into that wall. Life's, about, innovation, trying different things, different speeds and, having fun and, teamwork, as we were talking about before. I mean, here he is, he's got a couple dozen students. He's trying to, lower their stress level, decrease conflicts, and, you're all going to have to work together to get to that point.
Yeah. Another question here for you, Gary, that doesn't talk about. Do you think that when a student gets a new belt, they get whipped with it?
I would say no. I bet they have you think of some of these kids, they probably don't have a lot going for them in life. And I don't mean that in a bad way, the way it's, you think how, we've all received belts, and, it's such a humbling and happy experience. And, the more happiness and you can put in people's lives, and plus they work so hard to get it. That's another thing I think that's so great about jiu-jitsu is, you put in a lot of work. It's tough work. You're getting beat, you're getting tapped, you're working hard, your heart rate's going, some days you can't breathe, you're just so exhausted, but you learn to keep pushing through things. Like somebody I once saw a quote that it said, jiu-jitsu is being comfortable in uncomfortable positions. And I remember when I first started jiu-jitsu, somebody would stack me, and I would fight it, and it'd just be so uncomfortable. And now I've just got used to being folded up like a pretzel and being kind of comfortable, which helps you in your real life. So I do not think these people probably go through a gauntlet during their belt promotions.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Just guessing here, we don't know. And I don't know if we've mentioned the teacher's name, Fernando Restrepo, and so just get that out there. That way, give him credit where credit is. One more question about the school for you, Gary, just to kind of get a peek into what we're seeing when we read the article. These kids are, at risk, and sure, they see violence sometimes, what kids don't, but in some of these neighborhoods, I'm sure they see a lot more. But do you think that the actual skill of learning how to fight is the main focus and really what they're getting most out of these classes?
No, not at all. But first of all, I think everybody does like that feeling that they feel like it's going to help them in self-defense situations. But no, I would say that's probably one of the least things that, when Fernando started it. I mean, he's just trying to give an outlet, for these kids, give them a hobby, give them something positive in their life, something to do. And where I said they train twice weekly for 90-minute sessions. It also talks about he's teamed up with Bronx Jiu-Jitsu, which is probably a local school right there, to provide scholarships to students who wish to pursue jiu-jitsu outside of, the Bronxville school. And, so that's basically telling us, too, that a lot of these other kids, are liking it so much, they want to train even more. And, jiu-jitsu, is not the easiest sport to train if you don't have money. And, some of these kids probably don't have a ton of money. And I just think it's awesome that, he is working with Bronx Jiu-Jitsu and getting scholarships so these people can train more often. And, if you fill kids with, good hobbies and passions, they're less likely to get in trouble. They have, some goals to work for. And, this is, like I started off saying, it's just such a great article, such a positive thing that, Mr. Restrepo has done, for these kids.
Yeah, this is.
And and it's not just what Mr. Restrepo has done for these kids. I guarantee you these kids have made Fernando Restrepo's life so great too. It's I mean, they're both given to each other, giving back. Like, he's taking pride in helping these kids out, but these kids are giving so much back to him, making him a better, happier person there also.
Yeah, I think this is an awesome thing that we're seeing here. We have a lot of wrestling in schools and high schools and in the United States, and that's pretty much a common thing. But jiu-jitsu really hasn't broken that barrier yet to get into high schools, and it's going to take a teacher that's very special that can actually teach it, and then also a principal that says, yeah, this is okay. You guys are choking each other. Yeah, that's a good idea. And I think there's a bit of a gap between what is often perceived that these kids will be doing and what's really happening. I mean, they are learning what hard work gets them. Coming in and training twice a week for 90 minutes, doing hard work, and they're actually seeing the results of that. You could work hard. They could have, gone and played Xbox and got better at that, but they're actually seeing their physical hard work and their efforts and their team getting better. And they're making friends, and I'm sure these friends are basically neighbors that'll be, kind of have their back, and whether out on the street or in school, or if they start missing school, like, where are you at? You need to be at school, that sort of thing. These teammates will be really good to have long term. And I'm just thinking, like, how many great things Fernando's doing is really kind of hard to evaluate in the long run. But you're sure he's doing things for the positive, and he's doing those through jiu-jitsu at a public school in the Bronx. So that's really cool. Or Bronxdale.
Yeah. What I also like too is, it's not just him. It looks like he has support from the faculty at that school too, which, you're talking about trying to get jiu-jitsu at schools, and that's a tough part. You got to get the faculty in there too, support from the principal and, the management, basically the administration. And, he's got support, and he actually says the principal loves the paradoxical thing where I spend most of my day teaching kids not to fight, and now I teach them how to fight, how to grapple. So it's just it's great, support from the administration and helping these kids become better students and people.
This is cool. I'm thinking about, like, how they can get this to grow even within the school itself. You have those big assemblies. I assume they still have assemblies, Gary, where all the kids get together in the big gymnasium. Yeah. And they could, like, towards the end of the school year, or maybe at the beginning of the school year when they want to introduce the club to everybody, have one of the students from last year, like, throw the principal or do something kind of exciting. And like, hey, look at me, I'm throwing the principal, or, show a little demo. And the principal was like, okay, I'm not hurt, and it was fun. I think that would be kind of a neat way to showcase some of the physical skills that you're learning on the mat to the entire school. And
I tell you, everybody would show up to watch the principal get thrown.
Yeah, everybody would show up on the mats to learn how to throw the principal for next year, or at the end of the school year to show, pick the most improved student and toss the principal in front of the whole school.
Yeah. What they could do at their fair, their annual fair where they have games and stuff, they, instead of having the dunk tank, have throw the principal.
The dunk tank. Gary, you're old.
There we go again, Byron. Thanks for making me feel good about myself.
Did you have that, like, you would walk behind that big wheel with a stick and push it? Did you play jacks, Gary?
Yeah, I was pretty good at jacks.
Oh, man. We'll put a link to the article in the show notes. It's on nydailynews.com. And it's really inspiring with the hard work he's doing and the difference he's making in people's lives.
Yeah. Yep. So, man, congratulations, Fernando. That's awesome what you're doing. And, just a great story. I'm glad New York Daily News picked it up. And, I saw it, all over the internet, too. So it's just cool that some good, positive news is out there. So it's cool to see.
Well, Gary, the music is telling me that it is time to talk about your audiobook. I've actually put together a couple of audiobooks, and we're selling those through the little store that we have set up, and that's going quite well. But Gary is always in the production phase of his audiobooks. He's never quite actually made one. I like to give him an odd title and see where he wants to go with it. And it's always right around the corner, coming to be released at a holiday that's just going to be soon or late, I don't know. But Gary, your audiobook this week, you kind of maybe dropped a hint at it, but your audiobook this week, Gary, is called Duck, Duck, Snap the Goose, a grappler's guide to surviving grade school, I guess. I mean, we talked about a little bit high school, but, you play that game, Duck, Duck, Goose, in grade school. And, what do you got, Gary?
Well, when you first came up with this idea, just to let you know, this is Byron's idea.
Oh, yeah, thanks,
Duck,
Gary.
Duck, Snap the Goose. I was against it. I told Byron, I was like, first of all, I'm not into animal abuse. And Byron said, this isn't animal abuse. We're just snapping a goose. And I was like, Byron, what about PETA? PETA is going to boycott and get upset. And Byron's like, well, doesn't PETA stands for people eating tasty animals? And I was like, Byron, you need to do a little research. But once, Byron talked to me a little bit more about it, and it's really not like Byron said, it's about grade school, using your jiu-jitsu to survive grade school. It's just a flashy title. So I was like, okay, I'm all over this as long as, it's not going to be anything bad. And so, then I worked with my publisher, Publishers Clearinghouse. That's the publisher I use.
Yeah.
And, we were going to start it earlier, but they were too busy knocking on people's doors to, deliver some money. So we had to wait a little bit. But now we're finally in talks to get this thing done. And you think about how many people who have went, to grade school. And grade school can be tough, especially if you don't know jiu-jitsu. So it's, depending on where you went to grade school, it can be a tough time. I heard a story today about an Amish school that was really good at basketball, but they played in jeans, tank top and jeans. So, that's a tough school to go to. But what we're trying to do here is, we're just trying to make jiu-jitsu, more well-known in the grade school community. We look at it that way. More kids are going to sign up. More people are going to be exposed to jiu-jitsu. And there's going to be more schools that, in the area that teach jiu-jitsu, or the schools are going to be more successful because they're going to have more students. And it's going to lead to our eventual goal of getting jiu-jitsu as a high school sport. So Byron didn't think of any of that. I thought of the big picture myself. But so basically what we want to do, instead of just playing regular duck, duck, goose, where, you walk around and you tap people on the head, when all of a sudden you say goose, we all scramble for a choke. So we all try to choke each other when we say goose. And, so it's just cool games like that. Tetherball. We play tetherball, but what we do is instead of hitting the ball back and forth like Napoleon Dynamite did, we use our legs and put the ball into a guard, and somebody pushes us around that pole, and we try to stay on with our legs. Something to, strengthen the inner thighs to make your guard a little bit stronger. So that's another game we're going to play. So, it's just these games that are going to expose kids, to the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu. And, another game we thought of is shrimping ain't easy. That's another game we're going to play, and it's going to teach you to shrimp. But it's all, everything is just to get these kids exposed to jiu-jitsu so we can grow jiu-jitsu and hopefully in the long run, have jiu-jitsu as a high school sport, a sport in college, and maybe even in the Olympics.
Yeah, Gary, a lot of stuff going on with your book in production by the Publishers Clearinghouse. They'll get it all cleared out of there. The tetherball idea of wrapping that up. And
good idea, huh?
Yeah, that's really clever. And I think you'll become more dizzy than doing forward rolls in class.
Yeah. Yep, that's another thing I thought about that. Because a lot of times during a scramble, you can roll 3 or 4 times. You may come up dizzy. But the good thing about doing this game, you're going to, especially if one team doesn't win, because they keep pushing you back and forth till you run out of rope. Sometimes I've been stuck up there for 10, 15 minutes, and by the time I'm done, I'm really dizzy. So, it's just to build your skills. So it'll definitely help you out.
Yeah, Gary's had some bad experiences with that game because you really have to rely on your team, and sometimes when I'm part of that team, I convince the team to do other things. Gary's, he's working his rubber guard on that tetherball string, and we're smacking it back and forth, and he ends up getting tied up in the cord, and game's over, and we just leave him.
The other thing you think of, you're not thinking the positives there. sometimes that cord gets wrapped around your neck. I mean, it's just like fighting off a choke. So, I mean, think of the positives there, Byron.
Only Gary could think that a cord wrapped around his neck is a positive. Oh, man.
Yep, I'm always trying to get better, Byron.
That's right. You're always finding training opportunities.
Yep. So definitely check that book out. It should be coming out, around Boxing Day in Canada. So definitely, check it out around Boxing Day.
That's good timing for that to come out, Gary. It's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah. Yep, I figured, Boxing Day and that audiobook, they just go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Kind of like Oreos and milk.
In your hand.
Yeah. Speaking of in your hand, we could never get this show going without the helping hands of our Patreon supporters. Patreon, we do have a link to it. It's a website for content producers. If you have means to give a little bit of money to support the show, that's kind of basically what Patreon is. Some people donate per show. Some people donate each and every week. But like I said, they're helping hands to keep this show going on, and we really, really, really appreciate y'all.
Yep. Big thank you to our newest Patreon supporter, Nathan, from New South Wales. I really appreciate you supporting the show. We've got
thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you so much. We've got your gi patch and a couple stickers in the mail headed your way. You probably got them by the time this is aired. So thanks so much, Nathan. That being said, I've mailed. We have stickers for the Patreon supporters, and I mailed out everybody who's currently a supporter of Patreon. Has probably gotten the sticker in the mail by now. If you haven't got one, send me an email. Maybe you moved. Maybe I sent it to the wrong place, or likely a couple of our Patreon supporters have had their credit cards change, and they no longer work anymore. So that could be an option as well. So just check those out. I really haven't. And that's okay. I mean, people's credit cards change. Maybe they get a new one or something like that, and they drop off. But anyway, so if you haven't got a sticker, that might be you that has kind of fallen out of our Patreon supportership, and you used to be in there, and we thank you for your past support, but if you want a sticker, sign back up. It's pretty easy. So yeah, that's and Gary's got a bunch of stickers in his gym bag. I've got some in mine, so if we happen to run into you, ask us and we'll hook you up with some stickers.
You know what I've been doing just to get the word out?
I can't wait. Here we go.
I've just been finding cars out in the parking lot and just putting stickers on them.
There you go. And that's why I get all this hate mail.
Oh, I never thought of it that way, Byron. Sorry about that.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it's all part of the game. We have.
You should just do what I do. I take all the hate mail and put it straight to my spam folder.
Oh, I read it before I go to bed, and I can't sleep very well.
Oh, yep. You do it the wrong way, Byron.
I'm doing it terribly.
Yep.
Man. Gary, I've learned a lot from you today, my man.
Yep, I definitely helping out. But hey, especially talking about learning a lot. If you learn a lot from this show, or learn anything at all from this show, or even remotely or a little bit entertained from the show, definitely tell your friends about us. We appreciate word of mouth advertising. And if you're listening to the show, you probably either are crazy to listen to this show, or are jiu-jitsu fans. So that means your other friends or your friends are either crazy or jiu-jitsu fans. So let them know about the show, and hopefully they'll enjoy it also.
Yep. Hey, Gary, I have a message here from our friend Jeremy. Let's go ahead and play that. All right, my friends, I'm bringing a good training partner of mine, Jeremy Parrish, back to the show here. He's got a big charity event that we're hoping to see some of our listeners at. Jeremy, what's happening?
So on July 22nd, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., we're going to be doing a roll-a-thon, grapple-a-thon, long open mat to help fundraise for the We Defy Foundation. If you've never heard about them, they're a nonprofit agency that believes in the benefits of jiu-jitsu for our combat veterans that have physical or mental disabilities as a result of their deployments. Since they're nonprofit, they heavily rely on donations to scholarship athletes so they can hopefully improve their quality of life through jiu-jitsu.
Absolutely. That's a great cause. How do they help these athletes like pay for classes or get a gi, or what are they doing with these funds?
They have two levels of athletes. They have like approved veteran athlete is what I fall under, because I don't need the money but want to represent their gym. They don't give me any. Actually, I strike that. They provided me with some of the patches and some of a T-shirt so I could represent their cause. But they don't pay for anything for me because I have the means to do that myself. Then they have what they consider scholarship athletes. And those are the veterans that, for whatever reason, don't have the financial means to train jiu-jitsu, but believe that it's something that would really help them out. And the last that I checked, what it covers is their monthly dues. They have an agreement with the gyms for payments for these guys. And then they provide them with 2 gis that have the patches that are sewn on. And, if the veteran has a physical disability, that gi will be altered to accommodate that disability. So it's pretty cool. One of the big costs in jiu-jitsu is gis. So it's really awesome that they, get the veteran a gi that fits their body type and everything.
Yeah. Man, this is awesome. Looking forward to the event. It's going to be a great way to help this charity out, and they're helping our wounded veterans. And it's just, think about how much jiu-jitsu has done for everybody listening. And then, some of us are going through different difficulties and different tough times, but you get so much. You get starting out, you get that workout, that's always going to help you. And you get that team to support you and to grow your circle of friends. And you get those people that push you and help you grow. There's so much that jiu-jitsu does. And that's why I just love the We Defy Foundation and what they're doing. And this event's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, so there's so much going on here. So come on down July 22nd from 8 to 4. Not sure of when for sure I'll be there, but I'll be there getting choked out plenty. And Jeremy will be passing out foot locks and chokes as well. And if you want to roll, that's great. If you just want to do, like a little drilling with somebody, grab me or Jeremy or any of the other many people that will be there having a good time. And we'll be happy to do that as well. Jeremy, what do you think?
It sounds good. And I just wanted to take a moment and then just let everybody know to be on the lookout. The following day on July 23rd,
okay,
I've talked with the coaching staff at Valor Martial Arts, and they will be doing an open mat for the We Defy Foundation as well. I don't know the details yet because they haven't created the event, but they did say that they would run it on Sunday. So, if Saturday doesn't work out for your schedule, but Sunday does, definitely take the opportunity to, do some crosstown training at a different gym with people that are going to be at our event supporting what we're trying to do as well.
Yeah. So it's great, this community that we have in Wichita. People go to other seminars and open mats, and it's a lot of fun. I think that's pretty common in the jiu-jitsu community. But, if you're in town and for the weekend, you could do both of them. If just one day works out for you, definitely go to the one that's happening that day, and you'll have a great time and raise money for a great charity. So that was great having Jeremy on. We'll have him on again next week. The Grappleathon here in Wichita is going to be July 22nd from 8 in the morning until 4 p.m. That's a lot of grappling that day, but it's a fundraiser helping raise money for the We Defy Foundation, and they're helping combat veterans do jiu-jitsu. And I think, we talked about school being jiu-jitsu at school with kids that are having a tough time being really good for them. People who have seen combat, who have had some of those stresses or physical damage, jiu-jitsu is great for them potentially, and they're definitely helping to expose people to that.
Yeah, so definitely, I know this one's in Wichita, but, check out We Defy Foundation and see if they've got anything going on in your area. Or if not, learn about them and, donate if you do have the means. Great organization.
Yep. Send us an email if you're going to go and you're not already training with us on a regular basis, and at bjjbreak@gmail.com, and let us know you're going to be at at the Grapple-a-thon, and we'll try to be there at the same time if that's at all possible. I know I'm off that day. I can't probably be there the entire Grapple-a-thon. I'll get tired-a-thon. But Gary might be able to make an appearance as well.
I think I'm actually on vacation.
Oh, Gary, okay.
But, yeah, I'm sorry, but maybe I'll cancel my vacation.
You don't have to cancel your vacation. They'll just choke me instead. See, the way I like to do it is Gary will try to get them tired. Usually, just Gary gets tired, and then they beat me up after that. And,
yeah. There you go, making jokes about me being old and getting tired quickly.
But Gary, you're like my filter to help get people a little bit warmed up.
Yeah,
not quite tired, but they get warmed up.
Yep. Speaking of warmed up, I mean, it's almost noon here. I should go warm up my dinner. It's time to eat dinner. It's noon.
Gary's old enough that his pants just keep getting higher and higher on his waistline. Soon you won't even need a t-shirt.
Well, a half a shirt.
Had a great time this week on the podcast, and we have another episode scheduled for next week as well. As always, stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of nice that you have so many women in the beginners class that's showing. As I walk in as a woman, again, I just kind of oddly call myself a woman, but as a woman walks in, like it's not unusual for me to be in here. It's there's 4 guys and 4 women, and I'm one of them. Like that's. You're not questioning yourself, like, what am I doing here with these 20 guys that are all sweaty and we're on the mat?
Absolutely. Yeah.